Want to win $250,000 dirhams worth of advertising on ARN and a year's office space at Dubai Airport Freezone? Go to DubaiI1038.com and click the big break.
We're very pleased to have back in the studio in the morning time his old slot, Richard Dean from tonight here on Dubai Eye. Richard, good morning.
Always like being back in my old slot.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here. We, those of us who still wake up in early doors, do miss you. But I'm sure you are enjoying your sleeping. But you've come in with tidings of great joy, ho ho ho, given the season, to tell us about a really great new competition that you're going to be running.
We are launching on the Tonight Show The Big Break, and it's essentially a quest to find Dubai's best small to medium-sized enterprise. Because let's be honest, shows like this, like Business Breakfast or Tonight, or the business sections of the newspapers and the websites, they tend to cover the big companies. We tend to cover the big companies, don't we? The Emirates Airline, the MR Properties, we cover the European debt crisis, we cover the big stories. What we neglect are the small businesses. I just heard you interviewing the chief executive or chief financial officer of Al Marai, 20 billion dirham dairy company, but we neglect the small businesses, and they're the lifeblood. They're the ones that create jobs in any economy. They're the engines of growth and will be going forward. So the important thing to do is to make sure that we recognise them. And the Big Break is a way of doing that. It's a competition. People can enter on the website. Then we'll get the shortlisted companies in the studio, give them a bit of a grilling, and at the end there's a winner with some pretty cool prizes.
We've been interviewing over the last few days a lot of expatriates who've become entrepreneurs since they've got here, started up companies 10, 20, 30 years ago, who've done really well for themselves and actually become Dubai institutions as well. And they would have loved a prize like this when they were actually starting up to get them going. It is a cracking prize. Just explain what the prize itself is.
Okay, well, there's two bits to it. The first bit is office space at Dubai Airport Freezone. You get an office and you get licensing and visas and stuff for 1 year free at Dubai Airport Freezone, which, when you're running a small business, is just fantastic because these things can be expensive, the real estate and the licensing. So that's there for a year. That's free. Plus you get $250,000 dirhams worth of advertising with Arabian Radio Network. Now ARN, as we know, but perhaps other people don't, is the umbrella organisation for a whole bunch of radio stations. It includes this one, Dubai Eye, but also 92, Dubai 92, Virgin, City 101.6, Al Arabiya. So a whole host of languages, whole host of radio stations, reaches about 1.6 million people. So that kind of exposure for a small business, again, is invaluable, because when you're a small business, have you got $250,000 dirhams to throw at advertising? Of course you haven't. You can't afford it. This is the big break.
So who can take part in this? I mean, what prereqs have to be in place for someone who wants to win your competition?
Not many, to be honest, but there are a couple. The first thing is you do have to have a trade licence. So this is for existing operations. It's not for people who've got a good idea and always thought they might like to start their own business. It's for people who have already started their own business and taken the plunge. So you've got to have a trade licence in the UAE, and you've got to have been going for 3 years. So we're looking at companies that are companies, not just an idea. Now, you don't have to have 50 employees. You don't have to have turnover of 10 million dirhams. There are no restrictions like that. You can have 10, 100 million dirham turnover. There's no restrictions at the top or the bottom on size or scale. But we do want businesses that are up and running, not ideas.
I see, it does say here small businesses, so you're not saying that it has to be below a certain number of employees, below a certain turnover. It can be any size, can it?
We're guessing that most businesses that are less than 3 years old are going to still be small and medium-sized enterprises. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, he has a license here in the UAE. So, Mark, if you're listening, you can enter the big break. And it's interesting, what are the criteria we're looking at? We've got 5 basic criteria. And one of them is the business has got to be sustainable. It's got to have revenue and preferably profit. But again, Facebook isn't making profit. Yet, I think we'd probably let them enter because it's got revenues of several $1 billion. They're in the startup phase, so they're not yet profitable. But we want to see signs that this is a real business, a sustainable business going forward.
So what are these companies going to be put through, Richard? I mean, are you putting on your Dragon's Den hat here? Are you going to be grilling them in low lighting?
I shall be breathing fire on them. And I will be along. We've got a whole host of judges, business people from throughout the UAE are going to be coming in and judging them. So absolutely, we're looking at 5 criteria. Very briefly, they are: you've got a unique selling point, you've got to have a sales and marketing plan, you've got to have a good management team, you've got to have a business strategy, and you've got to be, as I said, a going concern as a business with revenue and hopefully profit. So those 5 broad criteria, and they'll get asked questions. So stage 1, you enter on the website. Go to DubaiI1038.com, and there's a link to how you can enter. We want your elevator pitch in 150 words, or people can just send an SMS to 4001 and they'll get a pushback SMS giving them details. So stage 1, you enter through the website, 150 word elevator pitch, and then if you're shortlisted, we're going to get 20 companies into the studio, and they will face a grilling from myself and others.
The last of the criteria you mentioned there was profitability and turnover. Are you going to be looking at largely profitable companies? Are you going to be matching, for instance, their business plan and their future growth plans to how much financing they've got available and how much they would be able to get?
Exactly. So we will look at the numbers. But as I mentioned with the Facebook analogy, Facebook probably isn't profitable yet. Now, we don't know, it's a private company. It is an amazing business, and clearly it's worthy of praise, but it's not yet turned a profit because it's still in the building phase. Google for several years didn't make profit. Apple for several years didn't make profit because they were in the building up phase. So if you're in the building up phase and you haven't yet turned a profit, but you seem like a really good business, then that's fine. But the point is, we will be looking at the numbers, and we want evidence that this is a sustainable business.
And I guess also one of the key and sort of perhaps hidden benefits to this is that anybody who wins this competition will find it much easier to go to a bank and knock on the door and say, can you give me financing? I've just won this competition.
There's several benefits for winning any competition like this. One is the prestige you get. It just kind of raises you up the bar, which is good. But also the fact that you've got 250,000 dirhams of advertising, that's going to generate revenue and sales. And the fact that you've got rent free for a year, and all your licensing and visas, you've got help with that. That's going to help you turn a profit, because that can be expensive. So all these different things, you get help on the revenue side with the advertising, and you get help on the cost side and the general business support from Dubai Airport Freezone.
Well, if you want to find out more about that competition, you can go to our website, www.dubai1038.com. There are links through there to the big break, or indeed text in on 4001. And we're getting a lot of texts, Richard, people very in favour of it. And one of the recent texts we've just got in, someone saying, as an owner of a small business, I know that one of the major challenges is marketing. I applaud your initiative. People getting quite excited about this.
So it starts today. This is the kick-off. When is it going to conclude? When will the prize be awarded?
We're going to be going through to January, so it's going to be stretched over a few weeks. The first stage is, of course, you've got to get the entries in, these elevator pitches, and then me and the judges, we're all going to pour over them, and then we'll shortlist 20 companies, and then we get people on air, and that's when the fun begins.
Any sneaky tips for those putting together their elevator pitches? Anything you're going to be looking for? Anything that can give people a nudge ahead?
Not necessarily me, but James Caan, who was one of the millionaire panellists on Dragon's Den, the popular BBC reality business show. He was in Dubai last week launching his new real estate venture, 90 North Real Estate. I caught up with him, and he had this one bit of advice for would-be contestants on any kind of reality business show.
So the advice would be, think it through very carefully, prepare for it, and make sure that your proposition is not only compelling, but it has to be bankable.
So there you go. Yeah, that is indeed James Caan, one of the dragons from the UK series, The Dragon's Den. Well, look, Rich, thanks very much for coming in and joining us on the Business Breakfast. Great to see you.
Want to win 250,000 dirhams worth of advertising on ARN and a year's office space at Dubai Airport Freezone? Go to DubaiI1038.com and click the big break.